Hi guys, I'm going to do a series of videos comparing the Lego version of the UCS Millennium Falcon to the Lepin version of the set. I'm going to build both sets simultaneously, comparing their strengths and weaknesses as I build them. Hopefully that'll provide some insight to the process of each. I think at the end I'm going to disassemble the Lepin one and create a Star Wars Outrider set, a mock of that. I'm figuring a lot of the parts will translate over to that pretty well. So that being said, let's get started, and the first one will be on packaging. On the bottom you can see the shipping box for the Lego set, and on top the set box. That cover art on the box is the same as the cover art of the instruction manual on the Lepin set. I would also like to note that I bought this in the brand retail store and not from Lego online. Inside that set box are 4 smaller boxes with a really nicely done integrated graphic art on the side there. And on top there is a quote from the film. Each box has a different quote. Each box also has about 4 steps per box, with the bottom one having actually 5. Going to the Lepin set is you get a brown box like this. I did have this shipped from Hong Kong, and there's really not much to it. There's no box on the inside. It's just a box of parts. I would also like to note that both sets need to be sorted some. The Lepin set has 169 bags. Each bag has a little number on it, like that says basically, if I can get this here without the glare, it's you can see it says 1-2, and so you can tell which bags go with which step. Legos are clearly numbered. The Lepin set, basically, sometimes the 6s all look like 6s, but the 9s sometimes look like 6s and sometimes look like Qs, so you have to be careful. Look at that sub number to see what number range it's in, and that'll help you figure that out. So that is pretty much it for packaging as far as it gets shipped. It took about an hour and a half to sort through the Lepin set, and maybe 15 or 20 minutes to sort through the Lego set. For some reason, I had in the first box parts from 1, 2, and then 15, 16, I can't remember. This one had some difference too. I thought they would be packaged in the order you're building, but I was wrong. All right, that said, next up we'll discuss the instruction manuals. On the left is the Lego instructions, on the right the Lepin and the respective decals at the bottom there. Starting with the Lego set, it comes in a nice little box there to keep it protected, whereas the Lepin does not. Matter of fact, the Lepin comes basically folded over like this. Therefore, that's what causes the creases and the wrinkles and the wear and tear in the manual. The Lego set is roughly pages 2 to 494, with pages 3 to 44 in intro and a little history on the Millennium Falcon, some design processes of the building of it, and an interview with the graphic artist and some issues that he had. It's presented in English, French, and Spanish, I believe. The Lepin instruction book has none of that. It goes from pages 2 to 311, and there is no intro. There's also no part list, whereas the Lego set does have a part list. I think it's pages 492 to 494. Also, there are the decals. You can see the 2 right there, Lego, Lepin. The Lego one's a little bit lighter. The Lepin is a little bit darker. You can kind of see that a little bit. But for all intents and purposes, they're pretty much identical. The only difference is Lepin says Star Plan. So I'm sure that's a copyright issue. One other little note, the cardstock of both manuals seem pretty close together. The Lego one is maybe a touch better, as is the paper, a little bit heavier, but not much, not really noticeable. But you will notice that in the Lepin one, or I did anyway, that I'm sure it's part of the printing process, when they stamp the pages together or punch the holes through it, some of the pages will now stick together, and they're very hard to get, or not very hard, but occasionally you have to separate them, and you will incur a little damage when you do that with these little tears. Not enough for it to fall out of the spiral bound, but there is damage incurred when you try to separate them. The decals also come loose in the Lego set, and for some reason, but they did this before with the Venator, they tape the Legos to the instructions there, so that kind of gets a little sticky. So they do that. I'm not a big fan of that, but it is what it is. Finally, it looks like where they can, Lepin's instruction book is basically for each 2 pages of instructions for a Lego, it's fit onto 1 page in the Lepin. I guess that's to save on printing and cardstock and pages. So that's really about it as far as the instruction goes. So here we have the setup for step 1. The left is the Lego, the right is the Lepin. The Lego has 6 bags total, plus these 2 spare bags for the Technic bricks that they need to add there. I think there's 26 for each one. This bag right here has an extra bag of pins in there, so technically 7 bags plus this. And that's the instructions for the Lego one. The Lepin bag, there are 13 bags to the Lepin one, and they are sorted pretty much by like parts, whereas Lego tends to be a mixture of parts. These are all very similar, so you can find them quicker. I kind of like the way the Lepin does it over Lego. Lego tends to need a little more sorting. I don't go sorting pieces before a build. I just go to the bags because I like the hunt. I've mentioned that before. I also made a mistake. Basically, it looks like 1.5 pages of Lego will equal 1 page of Lepin. So that these extra steps, this is extra on the page, and I believe this is also, whereas the Lego stops there. I just wanted to point that out. Step 1 is done. It's pretty much an identical build. The only difference being is the layout of the instructions in the instruction manual. There was 56 pages in the Lego set and 42 pages for the Lepin set. The time to build the Lego was 2 hours and 22 minutes. The Lepin 2 hours and 26 minutes, plus about another 10 minutes to look for some missing parts. Those missing parts I had 2 of them. One was a little blue pin like this, and one was this one plate right there. So I had the extra part in the Lego, the blue pin, so I used that. That was no problem. But I could not find a part for like this. This is the closest piece that I had in my part bank, so hopefully it won't matter too much assembling it together. There was really no problems with anything. The only thing is that these pins right here on the Lepin set are inconsistent. Sometimes they're loose, sometimes they're tight, as with the blue. On Lego, everything is consistent. If you've got a blue pin, you know how it's going to feel going in. If you have a plate or assembling the bricks, you know how it's going to feel. On the Lepin set, it is a little inconsistent. Some parts grip better than others. But it's still a solid build. Nothing's going to fall off of it. So that's pretty much it for step 1. Here we are at step 2. Lego has 3 bags with 1 smaller bag of parts in that one, and Lepin has 7 bags with parts pretty much sorted by type. Looking at the instructions, it looks like it's nearly identical like step 1, and should be a pretty quick build because it looks like you're just doing this 6 times. Here we are done with step 2. It was basically you're building the landing skids 6 times. In my case, 12, 6 for each set. For the Lego side, it was 5 pages long. It took about 52 minutes, 10 seconds. There was no missing parts, and I had 4 extra pins and no problems with it. It was a pretty solid build. On the Lepin side of things, it was 4 pages in the instruction book. It took about 49 minutes, maybe 50 minutes to build. The black, I was missing 1 black pin, which I grabbed from the previous step. There were no extras whatsoever. And there are a few issues with the Lepin side. If you look at the Lego side on the landing skid there, it's pretty solid. It's not going anywhere. This is solid too. There's a nice click to them as you move this back and forth. This one on the Lepin side, most of them are kind of loose like that, and there's really no clicking to this. It clicks a little bit, but it doesn't feel like it's on there as solidly as it is on the Lego side. Also, the cheese wedges are not as solid as they feel on the Lego side. While they're not going to pop off necessarily, a good vibration or a good jolt might actually knock one or two off. They're there, but they're not that solid. On both of them, I'm not really thrilled with the durability of the landing skids going into the assembly there. They're both kind of loose. They feel the same on both sets. But if I recall on the 2006 set, all three of those, the axle parts in there, which I'm trying to show you, went in there pretty deeply to hold it. It feels like it's basically holding on by the center one, and the two side ones kind of support it, but they're loose in there. They're really not that solid of a build. I was kind of surprised, and that was consistent with both of them. That's pretty much it for step 2. It was exactly the same build for both sets, and the instructions were exactly the same, no differences. Okay, so I'm about to do step 3. These are the bags for them. It looks like it's pretty much interior slots with some decorative details elsewhere on the hull there, or the subframe. And you got your two little figures there. For the Legos, there are 5 bags plus 2 interiors, an interior bag in there, an interior bag in there. For the Lepin, there's a total of 13 bags. And as usual, they group them by part or similar parts. So step 3 is done. The Lego side was basically 34 pages of instructions. The Lepin was 28. The build time on the Lego was 2 hours and 10 minutes on the Lepin 214. There was no missing pieces in either set. The Lego had about 20 extra little pieces right there, and the Lepin had 1. As far as building differences go, on the Lepin side mostly is that on the gun part here that drops down, the lower assembly, I can't get my finger in there and you can't really see it, but those gun parts are pretty loose. They would come apart pretty easily if it were to get a lot of play. The other thing too is on the little hinges, you can't really see them, but you'll notice them in the instructions that you have to build hinges, whereas in the Lego one they come assembled already. What I thought was, what I was kind of surprised by, is that when I built the Venator, every one of these guys would not, these little wedges here, would not clutch. These clutch pretty well. I mean, not great, but better than I thought, where I didn't have to glue them like I did on the Venator. I was kind of surprised by that and happy with that. As far as the minifigures go, here you go, if we can get this to focus up a little bit. There's the Porgs. Not really much of a difference there. Chewbacca, the main difference is it looks like the detail in the fur on the Lego one is a little bit sharper than it is on the Lepin one. Chewbacca, C-3PO is about the biggest difference. You can see the Lepin one on the right is a little more yellowy than the gold one on the left for the Lego one. And hopefully it's going to go out of focus. No, it's not going to, it's going to go out of focus, but you can kind of see the detail of the eyes and the face is just not as good. And the printing of the legs, while similar, are not exactly the same. And they're really not that much same on Chewie either. The big difference that I saw as far as decals go, on the left is the Lego, where the decal pretty much matches the color of the brick, but obviously on the right with the Lepin one, the decals are a little bit darker, so you can see them. They stand out more from the brick. Here's the setup for step 4. The Lego side has 4 bags with 2 interior bags on this bag right here, plus these 2 plates that you need. Lepin is 11 plus bags, we'll call it that. Basically, you have these 11 bags that you see, sorry about that. And then half of this bag, or a couple of parts from in here, are used in step 4. That looks like the rest are in step 5. So there's the setup. One other little point that I wanted to mention is just, this was a good example of flipping through the instructions. Again, it looks like an identical build. But I just want to show you that in the Lego side of the instructions, you can kind of see how they lay that out, whereas Lepin becomes a little more dense. That's what I was talking about a little earlier, where sometimes they condense 2 pages into 1. It's not everywhere, but they do that. I just thought it was a good point to show that to you. There's a couple things to note otherwise for the build, is that the blue these blue bricks with the axles on there don't grab or clutch into the Technic plates that well. I'm just showing them here because you can't see them when they're built. They're actually below the panels here. They hold enough to keep it together, but what's really holding that all together are the plates above. Whereas on the Lego set, they held pretty well. Also in this set too, the detail pieces in here are kind of loose, but they hold well enough together that it's not going to fall apart. And finally, this tube is longer than the Lego one, but you can see from the instructions, keep that tube in mind as I go over something else in a moment about those parts. The minifigures are basically, I'm trying to give you a little cat's little shadow there so they're not blown out. There's Leia, a little printing different, but not too terribly much. Han is there too, not too much in the printing difference, just slight issues. And they assembled pretty well. They just, you know, they're close enough to the Lego ones. The arms aren't going to stay on as well as on the Lego side, but that's I think that's common to most Lepin minifigures. For the Lego, there was 13 extra parts, and these are them, and there's 3 extra parts on the Lepin set. But I wanted to point something out I definitely noticed there. So we're going to take this guy down and this guy down, and we're going to compare the two. If you'll notice on these parts right here that there's like a little notch on this one, but there isn't one here. If you look at the Lego version of this set, it's kind of like angled a little bit where it's more sharper on this side and it's square. The Lepin set is rounded and they both look the same. Also on the pins, you can see the notches in the pins there, but on the Lepin side, that pin that, you know, you can kind of on the end there, forgive me here, like that, is in line with the other pins. So it shows you that it's a Lepin pin. What I found interesting was that in the instructions, it has all the Lego pieces in the Lepin instructions. They don't show the actual Lepin pieces, so that kind of indicates that they are probably lifting the instructions verbatim from the Lego set. I just wanted to point that out because it was pretty clear in this set.